Hey everyone, we're reading through the Bible, and yeah, I'm still, feel like the walking wounded with my broken shoulder that was dislocated, and like I said, I had fallen on the other um, side a couple of months ago, so that shoulder hurts. But anyway, if you pray, just pray for my right hand because it's not functioning. It's numb and tingly, and I'm an artist, so I really want my right hand back. Thanks, YouTube land, my friends in YouTube land. Cast my bread upon the waters, and any prayer that you offer will be so much appreciated. Okay, well, oh, by the way, I was thinking when I dislocated my shoulder, it was so painful. I don't know if you've ever had that happen, but for some reason it was like extraordinarily painful. When the nurse in ER was like, "What's your pain level from a scale of 0 to 10?" I was like, 10. And then they gave me morphine, but the morphine didn't even touch the pain. It was weird. It just made me dopey. But oh, my point was, I was thinking there's a prophetic psalm, Psalm 22, and the opening line of that psalm is, I believe, is my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And it's that's also what Jesus cries out on the cross, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And many believe that's, that he's actually obviously feeling that in that moment, but it's also referring to Psalm 22, which is, I believe, a messianic prophetic psalm. But in that psalm, it kind of, how to put it, it kind of spells out what kind of defines what a crucifixion would be like. And there's a part in there about how, this was a psalm of King David, but he was being prophetic, I believe. And one of the lines in there is something like, "All my bones are out of joint, and I can count all my bones." But I was thinking on the cross, there was, I think, a doctor who kind of defined what it would be like to die a death like that. And Jesus's bones were, his shoulders were dislocated, everything was dislocated, like all his bones, and that kind of, that's where we get the word excruciating, is, from crucifixion, the cross. But it was, it just made me really, really sad, because I can't even bear one dislocated shoulder, but to think that every bone was dislocated, it's just, ugh. Anyway, okay, just pray for me. Okay, so Genesis 41. After 2 years' time, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile, when out of the Nile there came up 7 cows, handsome and sturdy, and they grazed in the reed grass. But presently 7 other cows came up from the Nile close behind them, ugly and gaunt, and stood beside the cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, gaunt cows ate up the 7 handsome, sturdy cows, and Pharaoh awoke. He fell asleep and dreamed a second time. 7 ears of grain, solid and healthy, grew on a single stalk, but close behind them sprouted 7 ears, thin and scorched by the east wind, and the thin ears swallowed up the 7 solid and full ears. Then Pharaoh awoke. It was a dream. Next morning his spirit was agitated, and he sent for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men, And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but none could interpret them for Pharaoh. The chief cupbearer then spoke up and said to Pharaoh, I must make mention today of my offenses. Once Pharaoh was angry with his servants and placed me in custody in the house of the chief steward, together with the chief baker. We had dreams the same night, he and I, each of us a dream with a meaning of its own. A Hebrew youth was there and with us, a servant of the chief steward. And when we told him our dreams, he interpreted them for us, telling each of the meaning of his dream. And as he interpreted them for us, telling each of the meaning of his dream, and as he interpreted for us, so it came to pass. I was restored to my post, and the other was impaled. Thereupon Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was rushed from the dungeon. He had his hair cut and changed his clothes, and he appeared before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, but no one can interpret it. Now I've heard it said of you that for you to hear a dream is to tell its meaning. Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, Not I. God will see to Pharaoh's welfare. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, In my dream I was standing on the bank of the Nile, when out of the Nile came up 7 sturdy and well-formed cows, and grazed in the reed grass. Presently there followed them 7 other cows, scrawny, ill-formed, and emaciated. Never had I seen their likes for ugliness in all the land of Egypt. And the 7 lean and ugly cows ate up the first 7 cows, the sturdy ones. But when they had consumed them, no one could tell that they had consumed them, for they looked just as bad as before. And I awoke. In my other dream, I saw 7 ears of grain, full and healthy, growing on a single stalk, but right behind them sprouted 7 ears, shriveled, thin, and scorched by the east wind, and the thin ears swallowed the 7 healthy ears. I have told my magicians, but none has an explanation for me. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has told Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 healthy cows are 7 years, and the 7 healthy ears are 7 years. It is the same dream. The 7 lean and ugly cows that followed are 7 years, as are also the 7 empty ears scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I have told Pharaoh. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. Immediately ahead are 7 years of great abundance in all the land of Egypt. After them will come 7 years of famine, and all the abundance in the land of Egypt will be forgotten, as the land is ravaged by famine. No trace of the abundance will be left in the land because of the famine thereafter, for it will be very severe. As for Pharaoh, having had the same dream twice, it means that the matter has been determined by God, and that God will soon carry it out. Accordingly, let Pharaoh find a man of discernment and wisdom, and set him over the land of Egypt. And let Pharaoh take steps to appoint overseers over the land of Egypt in the 7 years of plenty. Let all the food of these good years that are coming be gathered, and let the grain be collected under Pharaoh's authority as food to be stored in the cities. Let that food be a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine, which will come upon the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish in the famine. The plan pleased Pharaoh and all his courtiers. And Pharaoh said to his courtiers, Could we find another like him, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? So Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since God has made all this known to you, there's none so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my court, and by your command shall all my people be directed. Only with respect to the throne shall I be superior to you. Pharaoh further said to Joseph, See, I put you in charge of all the land of Egypt. And removing his signet ring from his hand, Pharaoh put it on Joseph's hand, and he had him dressed in robes of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. He had him ride in the chariot of his second in command, and they cried before him, Abrek! Thus he placed him over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, yet without you no one shall lift up a hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh then gave Joseph the name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him for a wife Asenath, daughter of Potipherah, priest of On. Thus Joseph emerged in charge of the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Leaving Pharaoh's presence, Joseph traveled through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 years of plenty, the land produced in abundance, and he gathered all the grain of the 7 years, and the land of Egypt was enjoying and stored the grain in the cities. He put in each city the grain of the fields around it. So Joseph collected produce in very large quantity, like the sands of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. Before the years of famine came, Joseph became the father of 2 sons, whom Asenath, daughter of Potipherah, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, meaning, God has made me forget completely my hardship and my paternal home. And the second he named Ephraim, meaning, God has made me fertile in the land of my affliction. The 7 years of abundance that the land of Egypt enjoyed came to an end, and the 7 years of famine set in, just as Joseph had foretold. There was famine in all lands, but throughout the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt felt the hunger, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, Go to Joseph. Whatever he tells you, you shall do. Accordingly, when the famine became severe in the land of Egypt, Joseph laid open all that was within and rationed out grain to the Egyptians. The famine, however, spread over the whole world. So all the world came to Joseph in Egypt to procure rations, for the famine had become severe throughout the world. End of chapter 41. Oops, sorry, Annie. Wow. Joseph's dream came true. Interesting how, I don't think we've read it yet, but it comes from the story of Joseph, that famous line, what you meant for evil, God has meant for good. Everything that happened to Joseph with his brothers, they meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Okay, on to Mark chapter 5. Oop. Okay. There's Henry sleeping, and then I don't think you can see, but Custer is in the little cat tree. He's so black you can barely see him near the window. Custer? Custer! No, he's not even moving. Okay. All right, Mark chapter 5. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot. But he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw that the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with them. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," they said. Why bother the teacher anymore? Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to give her something to eat. That was Mark chapter 5. That was a great one. Yeah, that was really good. The healings. Jesus' healings. I've experienced that in my life. I had a miraculous healing 23 years ago. But maybe that's a story for another time. Because I need another healing right now. I need my hand to be healed. It's yeah. I love that Jesus just heals people. I don't think there was anybody who he didn't heal. Whoever came to him, he healed. And, I know this side of eternity, we die, we may be healed, but it's only temporary because ultimately we will die unless we're raptured. But yeah, I mean, every healing this side of eternity is temporary, and I'm talking about physical healing. But I love that he heals, and I need prayer for healing. So pray for my right hand, because, like I said, I'm an artist and I want to be able to paint again. All right. Well, I won't bore you with my sob story, but back to Jesus. Yeah. That was I enjoyed that chapter, except that whole scene with the demon-possessed man. That was kind of creepy and scary. I get spooked by those things. But anyway, all right. I'm rambling. I hope everybody has a good whatever day or evening. God bless. Bye.